Thank you for joining us today for the last of our 2020 Money Talks presentations through the ANA eLearning Academy. As you may have seen, we've recently added many new e-learning opportunities to our website. If you have not visited money.org in the last couple of months, I recommend jumping on to see the new presentations we've added, as well as our upcoming schedule. Now, during this presentation, you may come up with questions. If you do, please use the chat or Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to send in your question, as all of our attendees are muted during this presentation. Your question will come to me, and I will share the questions with our presenter at the end. If, at the end of the presentation, we're unable to get to all of the questions, I will send them to our presenter to answer. Toward the end of the presentation, I will be sending out a survey using the poll feature here in Zoom. Please answer each question honestly so that we can improve our presentations. The surveys will be shared anonymously with our presenter. So I'd like to introduce you to our presenter for the day, Michael Kodysz. He'll be giving a money talk titled Symbols of the Sun God on Coins of the Eccentric Emperor Elagabalus. So the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, known to history as Elagabalus, served as chief priest of the Syrian sun god El-Gabal. This talk explores the significant proportion of Elagabalus' coins that reference the sun god through symbols such as stars, stones, and the emperor's priestly accoutrements. Michael Kodysz was born in Cleveland, Ohio. He has collected ancient Roman coins for 20 years. In 2019, he won the Stephen J. Dippolito Award for Excellence in Numismatic Exhibiting and the Howland Wood Memorial Award for Best of Show Exhibit at the ANA National Money Show and World's Fair of Money, respectively. He earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from the University of Akron in Ohio and a Master of Arts degree from the Sotheby's Institute of Art in London. He currently teaches visual communication courses at Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland, Ohio. Michael, whenever you're ready, sir, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Sam. And I just wanted to welcome everyone as well, and thanks for joining. Sam did give a brief introduction as far as what the talk is about. The title is a little bit of a tongue twister, I would say. And he also mentioned that I had done some exhibiting. And I want to say that this talk is based on one of the exhibits that I had created, but it does expand on it quite a bit. So before we look at any coins, and we are going to be looking at quite a few, I do want to introduce the talk and what our goals are going to be, and also give you some background context into who Elagabalus is, because he's kind of a relatively obscure Roman emperor. He's not as well known to most people as, say, Nero or Augustus. And then let's talk a little bit about his quote-unquote eccentricities, because that is in the title. So let me try to get to the next slide. Here we go. Okay, so as Sam mentioned already, the talk presents a selection of ancient Roman coins issued under the authority of the Roman Emperor Elagabalus that show symbols of the sun god. And that these symbols take several forms. They include attributes of the sun god himself, the ritual dress and accoutrements of the emperor, and astronomical objects. So I wanted to make this talk collector focused. I think that this area of ancient numismatics is a good entry point. It's fascinating and there's a lot to learn. So along these lines, we're going to talk about price and availability for several of the coins. Not every single coin, we'll talk about that, but for some of them, just so you can get a sense of whether this is something that you'd like to try. And several of the coins discussed are from my personal collection. Generally, the ones that are going to be from my personal collection will have an image credit to myself. The ones that are 6-figure and 5-figure, those are not in my personal collection. I wish that they were, but mainly what I focus on are silver coins called denarii, and those are primarily the coins that we're going to be showing in the presentation, although there, of course, will be other denominations as well. The coins that I'm going to be talking about were struck both at Rome and at various provincial mints, but most of the coins I show will have been struck at Rome. Okay, so who is this Elagabalus character? His real name was Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, and he reigned from 218 to 222 CE. He was the cousin of Caracalla, who is a bit more well-known. Originally, he was named Varius Avitus Bassianus. Elagabalus was named Varius Avitus Bassianus. And he was born in the city of Emesa in the Roman province of Syria. He was, as all Roman emperors were, he held the title of Pontifex Maximus, which is the chief priest of the Roman religion. But at the same time, he was also the chief priest of the Emesene cult of the sun god El-Gabal, from which his nickname is derived. So his nickname is Elagabalus is a Latinized word for El-Gabal, and he is also called Heliogabalus after the Greek sun god Helios. He was a child when he came to power. He was barely 14 years old, and he rose to the rank of emperor after a successful coup against the Emperor Macrinus, and this coup was initiated by his grandmother, Julia Emesa. He was controlled by his grandmother and also his mother, Julia Soemius. And his cousin, Severus Alexander, eventually gained support of the army, and things ultimately did not end well for Elagabalus and his mother. So this map shows Rome, and it shows Emesa in location in Syria in relation to Rome, and the Battle of Antioch, the location of that battle, which is the battle in which the forces of Elagabalus were victorious over the forces of Macrinus. All right, so now it is time to talk about some of his eccentricities. And I put eccentricities in quotation marks because the first bullet point here, in which he was given to singing and dancing, I mean, I don't think that we would necessarily consider someone who's singing and dancing to be eccentric, but in Roman times, for a Roman emperor, these were things that were not considered things that Roman emperors did, and they were considered kind of bizarre behavior for an emperor by Roman tastes and standards. So with that quotation mark, again, I want to make sure that it's understood that all of these that's a hard word to say, eccentricities are eccentric in Roman, ancient Roman terms. So he was sexually licentious with both men and women. He desired surgery to transform himself into a woman. He frequented brothels and prostituted himself. And he was married and divorced multiple times. He took a Vestal virgin as a wife and sought a wife for his god. And of all these eccentricities, that was the most offensive to the Roman tastes. The Vestals were a college of priestesses that were sworn to maintain the sacred fire in the hearth of Rome, and they took a chastity of abstinence, and any Vestal virgin caught violating that oath was buried alive. They were executed by being buried alive. So the fact that an emperor would take a Vestal virgin as a wife was just the most outrageous thing they could imagine. He elevated his god El-Gabal, which was his Syrian sun god, to the position of chief Roman god even before Jupiter himself, and that quotation is from Cassius Dio. So that was also, you know, outrageous that he's going to take his local deity and basically overthrow Jupiter. He was also given to practical jokes, cruel practical jokes, and one of the most famous is his joke that he played, in which he smothered, supposedly he smothered his dinner guests by dropping flowers on flower petals on top of them. So in the Historia Augusta, it says that he smothered his dinner guests with violets and other flowers, but in this painting by Lawrence Alma-Tadema from the 19th century, it's shown that he's using rose petals. But either way, this seems a little bit impractical or improbable that people would not be able to escape from underneath rose petals. And he's also entered the popular culture as well. There's a teen erotic novel called Child of the Sun that was written in the 1960s, and a painting by Frank Frazetta was used for the cover, and it shows Elagabalus, who was another one of his outrageous behaviors for an emperor, was to learn to chariot race, and like an ordinary charioteer, that was a lower class sort of a thing to do. And he took as a lover his charioteering instructor, whose name was Heracles. So this painting depicts Elagabalus and Heracles, and the painting sold just last year at a heritage auction for almost $500,000. So now it's time to look at some coins. So we talked about his Syrian sun god El-Gabal. There is at Emesa, which was the center of that religion, there was a temple in which a sacred stone, a black stone, which was thought to be a meteorite, was the symbol of his sun god. So this coin of Caracalla depicts this stone. This particular coin was minted under Caracalla at Emesa, and it was the major cult center for the deity El-Gabal. And what it's depicting, it's showing in the center, and I hope you can see my cursor here. I'm circling the sacred stone, and there's an eagle in front of it. It's inside of the temple, and the sacred stone is called a beetle, which means an iconic stone idol. This was not the only beetle in antiquity. There were several, but this is one of the more famous. Okay. Let's go to the next. Oh, I'm sorry. This coin was sold by CNG for $1,250. All right, another coin showing the sacred stone of Emesa. This particular coin type is featured in Harlan Burke's book, 100 Greatest Ancient Coins. It's number 76 out of 100. This is a historically important rare coin which represents the state-sanctioned infusion of Orientalism into the Roman religion and anticipates the end of classical antiquity. An Oriental is a term, it's a historical term that denotes influences coming from the East being considered places such as Egypt, the Levant, and Asia Minor. So this this Syrian religion being infused into Roman religion was anticipates the end of classical antiquity is where the Eastern influences become dominant. This coin was minted at Rome. This particular type with the sacred stone in a chariot being pulled by a quadriga of horses facing left only occurs on Aurii, which is the gold denomination. And a less fine example than the one I'm showing here sold last year by Heritage for $18,000. Another variation of this theme, again, another Aureus. The inscription on the reverse reads, "To the holy sun god Elagabalus." It depicts the stone of Emesa surmounted by an eagle, drawn in a quadriga, which is a chariot pulled by 4 horses, and it's surrounded by 4 parasols. This particular type occurs both on Aurii and Denarii. So the Aurii is the gold denomination and Denarii is the silver denomination. This particular type was struck in the East at a mint often identified as Antioch in Syria. And again, another variation, because these are such wonderful coins, even though they are beyond my price range, but they're fun to ogle. This rare variety has a left-facing bust. This one sold for $72,000 in 2019. A silver denarii showing the stone of Emesa on the reverse with the eagle is this particular image from CNG. This coin is the finest of only a handful of these known. Minted again at Antioch. This type, very rare, eagle on the thunderbolt and 5 stars above. This sold for $45,000 in 2018. And now we have another denarius of a similar theme, showing the stone of Emesa in quadriga. This one is more affordable than the ones we just saw. It's scarce with a couple of dozen examples on AC search. And a nice example such as this will cost around $1,000 to $1,500. A variation of the type showing the head rather than bust. A bust is the emperor's portrait that has a drapery or a cuirass or something like that. The bust is just without that. And Felix in the obverse legend rather than the common abbreviation FEL, F-E-L. So an example such as this is about $2,000 if you can find one. They're very rare. I do want to mention that the reason that the stone of Emesa is being shown in the quadriga is that Elagabalus, after he became emperor, he moved the sacred stone to Rome. So it was transported to Rome and was placed in a temple. And once a year, there was a ritual ceremony in which the stone would be paraded through the streets of Rome in a quadriga, chariot with 4 horses with parasols, and the emperor would walk in front of the quadriga facing the stone, so he would be walking backwards through the streets, and this was also considered an affront to Roman tastes, this whole ritual. So from a collector standpoint, there are a lot of varieties. One of the things that shows the rarity of the particular type with the that I showed in the previous slide, which is here, and hopefully you can see my cursor that I'm circling this particular coin It's the one from the previous slide. This variety, this obverse die is very rare. And in modern coins, most dies are indistinguishable from one another. So, when you see two coins that look exactly alike, they look like they came from the same die. That does not denote rarity. But in ancient coins, there were so many dies did not last as long, and there were many dies cut for a single type. And the rarer the coin, the fewer coins that were struck, generally the fewer dies there were. So the idea that there are die matches on this obverse, there are 6 coins here from the same die. Some of them are the same type, some of them are different type, from a different type, but it does speak to the rarity of this particular variety. Some provincial coins that also show the stone of Emesa. This one is a bronze minted at Emesa. Has the eagle standing on top of the sacred stone. Another one, this one from Jerusalem, shows the quadriga from a frontal view. All right, so let's take a look at the priestly dress and ritual accoutrements of the emperor as shown on coins. What do these have to do with the sun god, or how would these be symbols of Elagabalus' sun god? Let's take a look at and identify what these would be. First of all, in the obverse, there's something called a horn, and I have words in quotes that this is the word or the term that's used in cataloging these. Horn isn't necessarily accurate, but that's what's generally found in the catalogs. And we'll discuss this horn or possibly what the meaning of this horn is a little bit later. But let's take a look at the reverse. So Elagabalus is shown here. The emperor himself is shown sacrificing over a lighted altar. He's wearing Eastern costume, his traditional Emesene costume, loose trousers, high heels, a large belt, sleeves, a cape or robe. Again, he's shown with the horn, and he's holding something which is usually described as a club or a rod. And if we compare this to a more typical, a coin from Caracalla, which would be a more typical depiction of the emperor sacrificing, and we look at the coin of Caracalla, we can see that he's wearing a veil, he's holding a scroll, he's also wearing a toga and sandals. So it's quite a different outfit than what Caracalla's Eastern dress would be. So his was considered quite exotic, and again, to the Roman taste, somewhat bizarre. Two things that these two depictions have in common is that both the Caracalla and Elagabalus are holding a patera, and a patera is just a shallow dish in which libations, which were usually liquid, were poured over an open flame as a sacrifice, and both, again, have a fire, an altar or a tripod in which a fire is burning. So again, from a collector standpoint, there are quite a number of varieties of coins showing Elagabalus sacrificing over an altar. On the obverse, some of his portraits show him with the quote-unquote horn on his head, and some he does not have the horn. Some show him with a standard or spear planted in the ground nearby. Some show him with a branch rather than this rod. Inscriptions are different. There's maybe a bull, the bull that's to be sacrificed. Maybe the bull is in the scene. So there's quite a bit of interest in this series, or interesting varieties in this series if you're into varieties. So let's talk about this horn. What is this thing? Is it really a horn? Well, some scholars think that the horn is actually a bull's phallus. And there was a scholar named Elke Krengel who wrote an article back in 1997. And in translating the German title into English, it's called The So-Called Horn of El-Gabal, the Tip of a Bull's Penis, a reinterpretation as the result of interdisciplinary research. So this is what she thinks that the horn is. It's actually a dried bull's phallus. This is not such a outlandish idea. Historical people and even some modern people, such as some people from Ethiopia, some traditional tribes from Ethiopia have used a dried phallus in a headdress. Generally, the phallus would represent virility, masculinity. These images are showing different variations of what this could look like and how they might match up with depictions in the coin portraits. These are images from the article by Elke Krengel. So to me, this is a very plausible explanation as to what that horn represents. And one thing, if I can go back for a second on that, what would this have to do with the sun god? Well, the sun god is, it's a symbol of virility, and virility is a masculine characteristic, and the sun god is, in ancient times, is associated with the man or maleness, whereas Luna, or the moon, is associated with women or femaleness. So it does make sense that a symbol of virility would also be a symbol of the sun god as well, or at least virility bestowed by the sun god, or as a gift of the sun god, perhaps. So let's take a look at what this club or rod, again, this is how it's described in catalogs, numismatic catalogs. What is this? What could it be? So this is my own theory. What I think it might be is it might represent cypress cones, because cypress was a native to Syria. And again, a pine cone is a symbol of virility. And the seed of the cypress, it was very prolific. So it may represent virility and reproduction associated with the sun god El-Gabal, since the sun makes life possible. And what I think it may be is it may actually be a rod, like a wood rod, a short wooden rod or stick, in which pine cones were fastened to it, perhaps to imitate the way they appear on a branch. And that's just my theory. I have not seen any other, really any other explanation for it. So one thing that we've taken a look at this, all the different features of what the priestly dress and accoutrement would be for Elagabalus, but one thing that we haven't talked about as part of the design is the star that is showing up on the reverse of this coin. So many of the coins of Elagabalus have feature stars, or a star-like symbol, I will say. On the coin types shown here, the star is paired with a traditional Roman deity, so Libertas, Sol, Victoria. The traditional deity is pictured with the the deity's attributes, but there is also the addition of the star. Even on coins of that Elagabalus struck for his female relatives, his wives, his mother and his grandmother, the star appears on the reverse of many types, along with traditional Roman deities. So on this coin, the star is shown along with Sol, the Roman sun god Sol. And as Sol hurries left, he wears a radiate crown representing the rays of the sun. He raises his right hand and holds a whip in his left. It could be that the sun or star symbol is meant to reinforce Sol's power, or is it that Sol is a supplicant of the Syrian El-Gabal? So the star could represent the sun, or the sun god El-Gabal. There are, again, for the variety collector, there's a lot of interest here. If you're looking at these closely, there are many varieties of types showing Sol and along with the star, varieties in the emperor's portrait, varieties of the way Sol is depicted, although they're fairly subtle, such as Sol's foot on a rock on some and flat on the ground on others, the star left or right, or in the left field or in the right field, different legends. The same type appears on bronze coins of Elagabalus, minted at Rome. Something like this is between $500 and $2,000, depending on condition and style. There are some rare varieties. Elagabalus did sometimes depict Sol without the star symbol. The one on the left, on the far left, number 134. And these numbers are corresponding to the CB catalog numbers. Number 134 is a common type, never depicted with the star, but the other two, the middle and the right-hand coin, are very rare without the star. It's Sol without the raising his hand, holding the whip, advancing. These are very rare variants, not include the star. So the source for depictions of Sol or Helios would be sculpture, colossal sculpture, miniature sculpture, and painting. These would be the patterns for the numismatic engravers. The imagery and the attributes of the various gods were well established by the time of Elagabalus. Again, Sol is the Roman version of the Greek god Helios. And the Colossus of Rhodes, which is shown here with the little boat underneath, is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world and may have been a source, but again, this was fairly standardized, and depictions of this would have been not very rare at all. Let's take a look at the attributes of Helios, Sol. Generally, he's left-facing. He's wearing a radiate crown, again representing his rays, a whip in his left hand, and a raised right hand. A coin of Elagabalus as Helios or Sol is very rare. The one I'm showing here is apparently the only known example in the Hungarian National Museum. This was minted in Syria about 218 at the beginning of Elagabalus's reign. Again, he's presented as Helios and Sol. This is the emperor here, raising his right hand, left facing, wearing a radiate crown. Presumably, it was withdrawn from circulation as the image was deemed inappropriate for imperial coinage at this time. Later periods, it becomes very common for the emperor to be depicted with a radiate crown representing his association with Saul, but for him to be holding a whip and raising his right hand is pretty rare. So it's probably could be the only one known. The reverse legend on here does attempt to legitimize Elagabalus's claim to be the son of Caracalla. He was actually Caracalla's cousin, not his son. And it reads, son of the deified Antoninus Pius. Elagabalus took the name Antoninus Pius after Caracalla. So again, it was a way to advance his legitimacy. So if we take a look at the family tree of the Severan dynasty, we can see where Elagabalus or Elagabalus is the grandson of the sister to Julia Domna, who was wife of Septimius Severus, whose sons were Caracalla and Geta. We can also see that Elagabalus had 3 wives, so he was prolific in marriage, and one of his wives, Julia Aquilia Severa, who was the Vestal Virgin, he married twice. So there are provincial coins which depict Helios and Selene. Selene is the moon goddess, Greek equivalent to the Roman Luna. And this is a coin of, provincial coin of Alexandria, showing Annia Faustina, very rare, about $1,500 to $2,500, depending on condition. And on the reverse, it is showing the association. So Helios and Selene, the sun god and the moon goddess, were associated with the emperors and empresses. And this is a fairly standard depiction. This is not anything unique to Elagabalus. This sort of depiction is a standard thing. All right, it shows Helios with the radiate crown. Selene can be identified because it looks like she has a crescent moon on her head. And the emperor would often wear a radiate crown, and the empress would wear a crescent-shaped diadem. This is showing a coin of Elagabalus and a coin of his grandmother, Julia Emesa. And we can see he is wearing a radiate crown, and Julia Emesa appears to be wearing a crescent diadem, although it's hard to be 100% certain that that is what it is meant to be, but we think that's what it is. And a coin of Annia Faustina. This is perhaps the finest known of 5 examples. It was sold in 2014 for $223,000. And it shows the star, so the symbol of the sun god, between the emperor and empress clasping hands in agreement. So let's talk a bit more about the star. Again, I have star in quotes because that's how it's usually described in catalogs. You know, what could the star represent? We've said it could represent the sun god himself, or it could be a symbol of it could actually be the sun. But a lot of the coins of Elagabalus will show a star that has an elongated tail, or what appears to be an elongated tail. And there are quite a few examples. of dies showing this star with the elongated tail. So again, for the variety collector, there's a lot of interest here. Also on bronze coins, so I just showed you some silver denarii, but there are bronze coins that show similar scenes, and this particular one is scarce. Price range is $500 to $2,000 depending on condition and style. Sorry, I went through that fairly quickly, that particular slide. So what are these things? We'll say that if they are stars or they represent the sun, they have elongated tails. Could they be Officina marks, which are kind of the ancient equivalent of a mint mark? That's a possibility. They do look like comets. I mean, comets have tails. If they are comets, they're highly stylized. They have rays, which are basically usually made out of just hatch marks, with the elongated hatch marks representing the tail. No ancient records survive that can tell us the specific meaning of these symbols, so we have to use our best judgment and hypothesize what they could mean. They could possibly serve as mint marks and as symbols of the sun god or representations of comets. I mean, none of these explanations are mutually exclusive. In my view, though, I think that they represent a comet. This particular die has a split tail, and comets do have two tails, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but the fact that this comet does have a split tail shows a remarkable level of observational accuracy. So this is a common type, but this particular die showing the split tail is apparently unique. I've never seen another one. I think that this is a representation of Halley's Comet. Now, the ancients did not know Halley's Comet as Halley's Comet, but it was named after Sir Edmund Halley in 1758. Sir Edmund Halley was a famous astronomer. Another astronomer whose name escapes me at the moment, did calculations to determine that comets that are recorded throughout history at various intervals do match up with the return of Halley's Comet, which is every 74 to 79 years. So calculating back into time, he found that Halley's Comet returned, had appearances in 1682, 1607, 1531, and farther back. And there does seem to have been an appearance of Halley's Comet in 218, which is the year that Elagabalus came to power. So in this image, it's showing a close-up or detailed view of the dust tail and the gas ion tail, as it's shown in an image from NASA of Halley's Comet, and also the way it is depicted on this the coin that I showed previously. I would say this is perhaps the only naturalistic rendering of a comet's two tails to survive from ancient Rome. It's not the first time a comet has been depicted, so the idea that this is a comet and it represents a specific comet is not far-fetched at all. A coin of Mithridates VI, king of Pontus, from 135 and 119 BCE shows a comet with a curved dust tail and a gas ion tail. I mean, I am identifying this as the gas ion tail. I don't think any references actually call it that, but that appears to be what this represents. and they were called war banners with the curved tails. So this comet appeared at the birth of Mithridates and at the beginning of his reign. Mithridates was known as the Scourge of Rome, so he was one of Rome's arch enemies. And this comet that is depicted is known as the Star of Sinope, which is in Pontus, a location in Pontus. In 87 BCE, astronomers think that Halley's Comet did make an appearance. And a coin of Tigranes II, king of Armenia, depicts this comet on his headdress. And again, it has a curved tail. So it may allude to the war banner comets to honor Mithridates. So it actually may allude to the previous comet, the Star of Sinope, but it probably represents Halley's Comet. Most ancient coin enthusiasts or history buffs maybe are familiar with Caesar's comet, or this coin of Julius Caesar depicting that comet. It's also called the Great Comet of 44 BCE. And it appeared after the assassination of Caesar, and is linked to his death and or divine status. Modern scholars doubt its existence. It may have been whether it existed or not, it was used as propaganda to deify, or as a sign of the deification or the godliness of Caesar. This one has a stylized fiery tail, so this it does not depict a split comet tail. And then I think we can add the coin of Elagabalus showing Halley's Comet. I think we can add that to this list. This was visible in the East and in Rome in 218. It terrified the Romans, and it may have prompted Julia Emesa, Elagabalus's grandmother, to initiate the coup against Macrinus. Cassius Dio, let me go back. Cassius Dio, the Roman historian, said that it was a bad omen. Generally, the Romans and ancient peoples thought of comets as bad omens. They were associated with the fall and rise of rulers, and as we can see with the coins of Mithridates and Caesar, the fall or the rise of a ruler, and the same with Elagabalus, it would fit that pattern that this is representing the rise of Elagabalus, the fall of Macrinus. There are many varieties of Elagabalus's coins, especially denarii, that depict this comet with the tail, with the elongated tail. And there are several varieties that show two, what appear to be two stars or comets. The star or comet that appears before the emperor, or which the emperor is facing, has an elongated tail. And then there will be a smaller, more symmetrical star behind the emperor, or in this case, there's one here showing Saul, but usually it's the emperor. And they're fairly rare. These may indicate both be depictions of Halley's Comet. They may actually indicate the same comet. So in this little chart, we can take a look at how that a comet's shape changes as it orbits the sun. And as a viewer is looking at it from Earth, it depends on the angle of view of the comet, depends on whether the tails are hidden or whether they're visible. Whether the two tails would maybe appear to be a single tail or appear to be two tails depends perhaps on the angle of view and the position of the comet in its orbit around the sun. This coin with two stars or comets on it is rare in that the star symbol behind the emperor is not erased. So the previous ones, and I really should have pointed that out, the previous ones, the smaller star symbol behind the emperor was usually erased, or it was obliterated from the die. And we really don't know the reason. Again, there's no mint records. We can just speculate. You know, we can say, well, maybe there was an error and all the die cutters put in two comets, or they originally had the star behind the emperor and then they decided it should be placed in front of the emperor. But what I'm saying is that, what I think is that it's not a mistake, that these are representing the same object, which is Halley's Comet, just showing different views from Earth. So this one, again, the only one that I've seen from a die that does not show evidence of erasure, and this one is in the $400 to $600 range. So, as I mentioned, I believe that this is the same object, just being depicted in two different aspects. So Halley's Comet appeared in the eastern sky over Rome, and it was described as a sparkling morning star. So it appeared in the morning between about the 8th and the 28th of May in 218, and then it disappeared for a time. And then it reappeared in the western sky as a long-tailed evening star between 30th of May and mid-June of 218. So astronomers understand, these two apparitions were recorded by both in China and in Rome. The ancient people, the Romans, the Chinese, would have thought that these were two different objects, two separate objects, but modern astronomers understand that they're actually the same object, just different. It's just a different way that Halley's looks as it's traveling along its path, along its path toward the sun. So Halley's was first seen at Rome on May 8th as a tailless comet, and then May 30th, it reappeared as a comet with a long tail, and it alarmed the populace at that point because, again, it was considered a bad omen. About a week later, Elagabalus defeats Macrinus at Antioch. So I think that the apparition of the comet prompted Julia Emesa, Elagabalus's grandmother, to initiate this coup against Macrinus. Macrinus could have seen this as an omen of his fall. So Macrinus had assassinated Caracalla and usurped the throne, basically. And Julia Emesa was determined to reestablish that Severan dynasty by elevating her grandson and claiming that it was the son of Caracalla. So, a good omen for Mesa and Elagabalus, and a bad omen for Macrinus. So we looked at coins of Elagabalus showing the sacred stone of Emesa, and we've looked at coins showing the what I think is a comet, and specifically Halley's Comet, or the ones, it could be depicting also the sun as well. But maybe Elagabalus viewed the comet as the source of his sacred stone. So according to the cosmology of the time, Greco-Roman cosmology of the 3rd century, let's let this load. There we go. It was thought that both the sun and comets were both made up of burning stones, and that sometimes these thunderstones, as they were called, were hurled by angry gods, landing on the ground as meteorites. Elagabalus may have interpreted the apparition of Halley's Comet as another aspect of his god. Now, a star on coinage would have seemed more familiar to the Roman populace than the stone of Emesa. And the stone of Emesa is depicted on coins that were minted in Antioch at the beginning of the reign. But once he moved to Rome, the Mint of Rome minted coins with the star symbol or the comet symbol, which would have just been more acceptable to the Roman people, or more familiar as a motif. So I have a hypothesis that the star symbols on coins of Elagabalus are related to are connected to Elagabalus's claim to power, the status of his god. He elevated his god to the chief Roman god in 220. Previously, Jupiter had been the chief Roman god. So what I'm observing is that if I count up the major coin types minted under Elagabalus prior to overall between 218 and 222, which is the entirety of his reign, 40% of coin types of Elagabalus minted at Rome depicted a star or comet, or depicted a star or comet, I'm sorry, but from the point that he elevated his sun god to the chief Roman god in 220 and beyond, 65% of coin types were featured the star. So that's very interesting. So in conclusion, Elagabalus used a variety of symbols on his coinage to denote the legitimacy of his reign, to proclaim his role as chief priest, and to promote the veneration of his sun god El-Gabal. Elagabalus's eccentricities, both personal and religious, were viewed by the populace, the Roman populace, as bizarre and foreign. Eventually, he lost the support of the army, which led to his downfall. Symbols of the sun god on coinage of Elagabalus are enigmatic and offer collectors, dealers, and scholars a variety of opportunities for learning and discovery. And that wraps it up. So I'm ready for any questions if anyone has anything.
Nice. Well, Michael, thank you very much for that presentation. Folks, I am now going to be launching a survey through the poll function here. Please, it is multiple choice. If you need to elaborate on one of your answers or you have additional comments, please email them to Brianna Victor at seminars@money.org. Again, if you need to elaborate on any of the answers here in our poll, email them please to seminars@money.org. Michael, I'm looking and I didn't see any questions come through the chat or the Q&A. That's what happens when you give a good presentation and you don't leave any no. Let's see. Actually, all right, we do have one question that just came in. One person asks, have the coins shown here been cleaned or conserved?
Most ancient coins have been cleaned and conserved at some point, so it's different than modern coins, which you just don't, generally that's a big no-no. I would say I generally don't clean my coins, but I do recognize that a shiny silver denarius is probably been cleaned and conserved in some way. Most of them come out of the ground or have come out of the ground at some point, and somebody has cleaned them somewhere along the line. What I try to avoid are coins that have evidence of harsh cleaning. So if I see hairline scratches, similar to a modern coin, if it was been gently cleaned, then that's just, it just depends. Even tones, coins that are toned could have been cleaned, a century ago, and then they retone. So it's kind of a hard to tell exactly when a coin has been cleaned.
Sure, I'm pretty sure the first two denarii I ever bought were of Gordian III, pretty common types, and in wonderful condition, and they did not break the bank. So I'm pretty sure they've been cleaned at some point.
Yeah, and if a coin is very rare, a very rare variety, I'm much less picky about what condition it's in. And I did show some very rare varieties in here that were pretty rough looking, but it depends on how interested you are in the varieties.
Yeah, one person shared here. Yep, Michael is correct. Coins are routinely cleaned once they come out of the ground. I could not agree more.
Again, I try to leave mine alone. Although there have been times when there have been little from like a coin tray, there might be some little fuzzes or fabric pieces. You can see through I can't even think of what it's called, but through magnification. And I'll use rubbing alcohol or was it acetone? Am I thinking of the right thing? I can't
quite alcohol if I need
and just very gently with a Q-tip, and I haven't harmed any coins that way.
Nice. Yeah, I got a couple people coming in thanking you for a great, interesting presentation, of course.
Thank you.
Let's see. One person did ask here, is the extent of Elagabalus' activities, multiple marriages, religious manipulation, was that typical for a Roman emperor who was killed by age 18?
No, it wasn't. No, not at all. That's why he's pretty remarkable. That's one reason that he's become kind of a modern cult icon. There are a lot of, I mentioned the book, the teen kind of erotic book, and he's kind of become an icon for that sort of a thing. Subcultural sort of an icon. There have been plays written about him, and again, he's kind of a little bit obscure. He's not famous in the sense of the 12 Caesars, but he's really interesting. I mean, it's really fascinating that he reigned for 4 years and he died at the age of 18, and it's really fascinating to read about him.
So let's see, one other person asks, did the emperor take a hands-on approach as to when the designs were changed, and who was responsible for the coinage, and what mints were involved?
Oh boy, that's a many-part question. So my understanding of the way that the Roman emperors, how involved they were in the iconography of their coins, I think that based on some research, and I right now I have the bibliography page up, and there is research. There's a book called Coining Images of Power by Erica Manders, and there's another Under Divine Auspices by Claire Rowan, in which they study the iconography of the coins and try to determine whether certain emperors favored certain imagery over others, whether they, did the Saul appear more often on the coin of one emperor than another, just as an example. And they have found that that is the case. So the emperors did promote an image. They favored certain gods. It does seem that they did have a hand in determining what types of imagery would appear on their coins. But on the other hand, they may have also relied on standard types. There were just kind of like stock types that were minted for most emperors, and the mint supervisor would have probably determined that sort of thing. But it does seem the emperor or an agent of the emperor was involved with it. And what was there's so many parts to this question. What was the other part?
Yeah, so the question was, did the emperor take a hands-on approach as when designs were changed, who was responsible for the coinage, and what mints were involved?
Okay, so mints, there were many provincial mints, and there's too many to list. I'd have to, show you a huge list of them. But the eastern cities, the cities of the eastern provinces, like in Asia Minor and the Middle East, minted their own civic coinage, and they generally would mint they would depict the emperor on the obverse and usually some kind of a local deity on the reverse. That was pretty typical, but the imperial mints were at Rome and some Antioch or Emesa. There's really there are no mint records, so we don't know 100%. Usually in the catalogs, it's described as the mint of Antioch, but we really don't know that. It could have been Emesa, it could have been Laodicea in Syria. There's multiple locations that they could have been mints moving along with the emperor as he traveled to Rome from the east. So
another question we have says, does anyone know where the Black Rock ended up? Back to Emesa?
Oh, well, this is a very interesting question. The answer is no, not exactly, but there is a theory that the black stone of Emesa could be the stone at Mecca. So there is a stone at Mecca that Muslims, and I'm really not familiar with this too much, so I don't want to
the stone in the Kaaba.
Give misinformation, but there are the Muslims, when they pilgrimage to Mecca, there's like a stone in some kind of a shrine that they circulate around, and I'm not sure exactly the symbolic meaning of the stone to them, but they think that may possibly be a fragment of the stone, if not the whole thing. It may have been. We do know that it was sent back from Rome once Elagabalus was assassinated, and it was transported back to Emesa. But after that, we're not sure, and it may have been destroyed, possibly broken up maybe by Christians, or it may be, again, the fragment of it may be in Mecca. But that's just a speculation.
Nice. Yeah, and I think the black stone in the Kaaba in Mecca is supposed to absorb the sins of the pilgrims.
Okay, yes, I should have been prepared for that question. I looked into it a little bit, but that sounds right.
Nice. So another question came in. How do you tell the difference on coins of or the difference between coins of Elagabalus and Caracalla?
Okay, sometimes it can be really hard to tell because the portraits can look similar, especially Caracalla as a youth, and also the inscriptions on the obverses can be exactly the same. So they both had the same name, Antoninus Pius, and it could say like Antoninus Pius fell Augustus or whatever. And it's sort of practice. They look, to kind of a practiced eye, you can tell the difference between a portrait of Caracalla and a portrait of Elagabalus. They just look different. It's subtle, but if you are practiced, you can see it. And also the coin types, the reverse types, they don't overlap too much. I can't offhand think of any reverse types that are the same. But there may be a few, but most of them are recognizable by the reverse or the reverse inscription. Okay. But people confuse them all the time, even auction houses and dealers. I see that happen all the time where they're misidentified.
Yeah, it's tough with Caracalla as it goes from like younger to older with the beard. Yeah, there's a lot of photos, a lot of pictures.
portraits of Caracalla progressed from him as a very young boy of about, I think, about 8 years old, all the way to a man of 28.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's why it could be confusing.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for the Eric. So,
Yeah.
one other person says, yeah, thank you for the fine presentation and the useful bibliography. I am most interested in your discussion of Comet iconography. And then they also asked, where was he buried?
Where was Elagabalus buried?
Yeah, if he was buried. Yeah.
Well, no, this is a really fun question. So I should just say that, you know, in doing the presentation, a little bit of nerves. Sometimes I may think, oh, I should have mentioned that detail, and I think I left that out. So he was overthrown, and he was him and his mother Julius Soemius were executed in a barbaric sort of way. Their bodies were dragged through the streets of Rome, and then they were thrown unceremoniously into the Tiber River, which is what they would do to criminals. So, you know, they're somewhere floating in the ocean, or there's, like, you know, a particle in the ocean somewhere.
Oh, man. Oh, Mike, yeah, one other person, yeah, I really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of people really dug that presentation, Mike. So, again, yeah, that was all the questions we had come through. I really want to thank you again, Mike. We do have a certificate of appreciation we'll be sending to you pretty soon. Folks, thank you very much for joining us for this presentation today and for all of the Money Talks lectures we featured this month. Would have been much nicer to have them in person in Pittsburgh, of course. But
Sam, can I ask one more question?
Sure, please go ahead.
So if anybody has or can think of any questions, are they able to forward them to me? Or
Yes, absolutely. If you want to share it on the screen right now, or if you just want to say out loud, that'd be fine. Go for it.
Oh, for email?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. I'm
Whatever
not
best way
going to share it on the screen, but I can I write? No, I'll say it. Okay, so my email address is M as in Michael, Kodysz, exactly the way my last name is spelled. So MKODYSZ @yahoo.com.
All right, I'm going to share that with everyone right now. So, yeah, it's there in the chat if people want to go on and say, yeah, Kodysz at yahoo.com.
Yep, that's it.
Got
I'm
it
not seeing the chat, but.
Okay. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of activity. Most of the questions came through the
Okay.
Q&A function there. Someone else wanted to let you know, nicely done.
Well, thank you very much.
And this guy, I won't say his name, but a phenomenal exhibitor. So high praise from Caesar, trust me. And you know, and going out to a Dippolito winner, yeah, it was pretty cool. I love that exhibit when I got to see it.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Can I? You had it at the fun show too, didn't you?
Sorry.
Did you display it at the fun show this year?
I did, yes.
I thought. Okay, thought so.
Oh, so I know we're going a little bit long, but
right ahead.
if people are interested in the exhibit, I am showing a virtual version of it at the NNP Symposium. So it's the Numismatic Portal Symposium, and that's free to everyone. All you need to do, I think you need to register with it, but
I think so. Yeah, if you go to the NNP website.
Yeah, and I also have information. Well, I will post information about that at the American Numismatic Association members Facebook group.
Thanks for doing that, Mike.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Yeah, and one other thing, another shameless plug for your next presentation that you have for us through an ANA eLearning Academy presentation is going on Monday, September 14th at noon Mountain Time, same time as this presentation. And this one is called Digital Image Editing for Numismatists, Getting Your Obverses and Reverses Together. So please join us then, again, on Monday, September 14th at noon. I believe Brianna Victor will be hosting that one. Our next presentation through the ANA eLearning Academy will be the last of our Sunman lecture series in conjunction with the canceled World's Fair of Money. It'll be Women in Military Numismatics by Fred Schwann. And that is tomorrow, Thursday, August 27th at noon Mountain or 2 p.m. Eastern. Folks, thanks again for joining us, and we'll definitely see you next time at the ANA's eLearning Academy. Mike, thanks again for your time today. Really informative.
Thank you very
Really
much,
good stuff.
Sam, and thanks everybody for joining.
Take care. Thanks again, everyone. See you next time.